This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice.
Whoa, he's a woking class man.
You happy with that?
Fucking hell. Have you ever heard of improv, everyone? It's called Yes And. Very rarely in improv classes does someone do something and someone says, you happy with that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, just checking. But that's fine. If that's what you want to go with, that's good.
Well, I've just been singing that song all week because I read Herald Sun. I read Joe Hildebrand's profile on Anthony Albanese, and I learned that he is no working class hero. Front page of the newspaper, I am not woke.
Scream it from the rooftops.
The not was underlined, so you know that he's not woke.
Yeah. Probably most of the people who listen to this podcast saw this article. It was just Anthony Albanese just trying to present himself as conservative as possible, right? And the Daily Telegraph being like, will you stand up for poor people and, people of color and migrants and trans people and gay people and women? And him just being like, no. And then doing a dab.
I'm for mainstream Australia, which I love that now. I mean, the White Australia policy finished in the early 70s, and now we're into mainstream Australia.
Yeah.
And wink, try and figure it out for yourself. It made me so angry for both political reasons, but also knowing that Joe Hildebrand would be so happy that I'm angry, right? Like the whole purpose of this article is to trigger fucking SJWs like myself. And it fucking worked.
I'm so
He got us real good.
Little snowflake me, I'm fucking melting away. I'm a puddle. I'm an absolute puddle of despair. We could have read the article on the podcast, but honestly, I don't think I can read it more than once because it was so fucking depressing to read. It literally is just like a laundry list of everything that Labor has ever let you down on. Like if you're talking about climate change, Adani, corporate tax cuts or tax cuts for the rich, raising New Start or social policy, LGBT rights, anything like that. It just runs through them as Anthony Albanese confirms that Labor is not going to take them on. I think, and the best part as well is I think at one point it's he's going to ditch the Marxist class war rhetoric of his predecessor. And I was like, who, Bill Shorten?
From his predecessor, Bill Shorten. And this is the Murdoch brain at work. You've seen this across the board, right? It is class war rhetoric. I mean, I would say that Albanese goes even further in this, fundamentally undermining the very reason for the existence of his party and completely denying any concept that there are diametrically opposed interests between workers and capital, okay? Mr. Albanese said making business more productive and profitable was also the key to creating more employment and better paying conditions for workers. Labor will be a friend of business. You can only be a friend of the worker if you're also a friend of business.
Yay.
In industrial relations as well, business and unions have common interests. No, they fucking don't. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist.
No, that's literally that's just
the whole thing.
The opposite of labor theory. The trickle-down economics brain is it's really on fire.
In industrial relations as well, businesses and unions have common interests. You need to have successful businesses to have more workers working for those businesses. The key to both increasing profits and increasing wages is productivity. And it's just no, it's not. There's a graph. There's a clear
really
graph that says productivity goes like this and wages are flatlined.
Yeah.
Why are you talking about you fucking moron?
No. Okay, Tom. You are the true moron if you can't see through the News Corp's lies and the Murdoch media, attempts to spin the truth about our hero ALBO.
That's a direct quote.
Is it true, Tom, or did you read it in a News Corp fucking newspaper?
Scum.
Yeah,
I did read it in the Herald Scum.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you can't trust any of this, which is why I decided to send a message of reassurance. I was looking a little bit at the pictures that they included in this article, and actually you can see that Anthony Albanese is sending us a message and he's letting us know that it's okay. And what's printed in this newspaper is not true.
Right.
Except if people who want it to be true read it, and then it's definitely true and they should vote for Labor. But for the people who don't want it to be true, it's not true.
Yep. Okay.
And you know this because if you look closely, there's a picture of Anthony Albanese standing under the No Working Class Hero headline. He's wearing, and I'm confused because he is a working class hero, I guess. He's just not a working class hero because he's not wearing a suit and tie.
Uh-huh.
He's just a regular guy. He's just wearing kind of like an unusually wrinkled polo shirt.
Mm-hmm.
It's as though he's like deliberately washed it and then scrunched it into a ball and then put it on. But yeah, he's got a pair of jeans on. He's got one hand in his pocket, thumb hanging out. But then the other hand just rested gently on the hip. And if you look closely, his hand's in kind of an upside down W shape.
Wait, what?
He's got this, he's got his middle fingers are kind of wedged together in what looks like a deeply uncomfortable and natural position. So he wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for a reason. And that's how I knew that he was telling us he is woke. That's an upside down W and it stands for woke. And so I said, don't worry, guys. He's just doing the sticky out the libs and then he will stop Adani. We just need to trust the plan. But yeah, I tweeted this picture. Many people were really reassured, but some people really thought that I was being silly. You know, I got one person in capitals, Zach, with 2 Australian flag emojis. And Zach simply says, it's clearly an M for moron, like yourself.
Whoa. He's a woking class man.
The Greens Party is a party of hatred.
They're not green. They don't seem to care about the environment.
As the Greens are kryptonite to the federal Labor government, so the Greens will be kryptonite to the state Labor government.
Frankly, I've always found the Greens to be a real serious danger to Australia.
Serious danger to Australia.
All right, let's do this. This is Serious Danger. I'm Tom Ballard. With me is Emerald Moon, who's a very cheeky person on Twitter. Hello, Emerald.
Hi, Tom.
This is a podcast about Greens politics in Australia. It's not an official Greens Party podcast. Please stop asking. We're independent. We're Greens members. We vote Greens. We try and bring about the Greens utopia, but this ain't official, okay?
Okay, fine.
Yeah, you sound disappointed. This week on the show, we are talking about the Greens policy announced this week designed to end poverty and bring about the socialist utopia where everyone can retire at 18 and we can all shit on the social contract. That's going to be awesome. And our very special guest is musical comedian, satirist from The Chaser, Andrew Bloody Hansen. Now, you're very excited, Emerald. This brings you with a lot of like teenage joy. Is that right?
I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to be too starstruck to talk to Andrew Hansen. Quite seriously. When I was about 12, I was absolutely obsessed with The Chaser. Like obsessed.
Obsessed.
Yeah.
Of course.
I still have. In fact, yeah, I still have like I have the CNN DVDs, all of the Chaser Tour and everything DVDs. Yeah, the DVD. I don't know why.
Oh, they're great. They're great. Andrew is a lovely dude. He's touring a brand new show. We're going to talk to him about that. He has some new music that we're going to debut on this podcast on Triple J. Exclusive. This is huge.
Did you just accidentally say on Triple J? Or did
on Triple J? No, I'll be saying that throughout the episode. Don't you worry.
Oh, good. Okay.
We'll be back after this song. Very quickly, some housekeeping. Huge thank you to all the people who have signed up to Patreon. We have brand new patrons. We've crossed the 100 patrons mark, Emerald.
Wowee.
Thank you very much for people who got on board. A lot of love and feedback for our Patreon exclusive episode about the book This Tattooed Land. Liam Blair has signed up as a patron. He says, hello, cunts. That's a demo.
Hi, Liam.
I was going to do $4.20 as a patron amount, but I'm not original now. I'm copying someone. Sad face. But he still did it.
Someone had already. Oh, but he did do it. Thank you so much.
Our favorite patron, Space Dragon, commented saying serious banger. I enjoyed that. And we now have a patron called Punny McFlipplenips. So
Punny McFlipplenips. That may be their real name, you know. I'm not well placed to make fun of anyone's names, so.
Also, before we jump into it, we should mention we recorded last week's episode before the South Australian election results had happened, even though the episode came out on the Sunday. You know how it works. Basically, you know, congratulations, I guess, that another election happened and there were Greens volunteers out there campaigning for the Greens. I saw a lot of reporting saying it was the best ever result in terms of the vote share for the Greens. It was a 2.2% swing to the party, bringing us to an 8.8% total. That re-elected Robert Sims in the upper house. The other Greens MLC was not up for election. So its status quo remained. And I think for most of the parties, I think the Libs lost one upper house seat, but everybody else pretty much stayed the same. So in terms of the upper house, very similar status quo. But in the lower house, pretty massive result for the South Australian Labor Party. They've got a thumping majority now.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, really big.
Yeah.
Look, this is something that may well warrant an entire conversation on its own, but it just stuck out to me, this piece of conventional Australian political wisdom that I'm interested in your thoughts in, Emerald, which is whether or not we should prepare ourselves for the reality that at the upcoming federal election, lots of people may want to change the government. And when Labor is opposition and people want to elect a Labor government, then that's when things do get trickier for the Greens. What do you make of that?
Oh, yeah, I think we would definitely need a bigger conversation. That's like my biggest that's a big thing on my mind at the moment. It's definitely a challenge for us.
Right.
Yeah, I think we just need to keep being our radical selves and do the things that Labor can't and won't do, because clearly there are a lot of things that we will that they won't, which, if I may, kind of leads me into our main chat.
That's brilliant.
It is pretty radical idea, apparently, that nobody should live in like crippling poverty. But yeah, so this week the Greens launched our plan to introduce a livable income guarantee. The plan itself, it includes like a whole bunch of welfare reform stuff, really, and reforms to our social security system. The headline part of the policy is raising the income support rates above the Melbourne Institute poverty line. So that'd be $88 a day at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It'd also replace the privatised Job Active scheme with a public employment service. It would abolish mutual obligations measures from the social security system. So including stuff like the cashless debit card, the basics card, work for the Dole, Parents Next, and a bunch of the youth employment programs that have really kind of exploitative obligations and just like use vulnerable young labour for profit. There's heaps more in the policy. Maybe we can put a link in the show notes, but it also includes 5,000 additional Centrelink staff, a lower eligibility age for job seeker, bringing that down to 18 years old, abolishing the liquid assets waiting period, the 1 week waiting period, the parental income and asset test for those not living at home. It changed the partner income test and rate, and it incorporates the energy and pension supplements into the base rate, but it adds like an extra payment, an extra supplement for people with a disability or illness that's preventing them from working. So it's a massive, like, it is a really kind of ambitious policy.
Yeah, I think we should just clarify so that, let people know what the current job seeker rate is and just how much of a transformation this is, I suppose. And also, I guess, the fact that this is going to be lifting all those payments across the board. So job seeker is currently $45 a day, sort of works out to about that for a single person, something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, $45 a day.
Right.
And I think youth allowance is even lower, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't get job seeker until you're 21, which again, part of the policy, as you mentioned, is bringing that down to 18. And that Melbourne Institute poverty line is also higher than what other people might have heard, which is the relative poverty line, which is sort of in relationship to the minimum wage kind of thing. But this other poverty line, also known as the Henderson poverty line, is a much more holistic idea of what it actually costs to be alive, housing costs, and all the things that are involved in just being a human being and trying to get by. And that's certainly why, for a lot of anti-poverty activists, that is the preferred measure, that we should say, no one should be living below this amount in order to live a decent life in a very wealthy country like Australia.
Yeah. I always remember, one of my earliest memories, actually, I must have been like 7 or 8. And I have this distinct memory of like pulling into the driveway with my dad. And he picked up the mail, and I was asking him, as kids ask weird questions, I was like, Dad, who do you hate most in the world? Who's the person that you hate most? And he's like looking at his mail, and he just goes, Centrelink. And I was like, okay, weird answer.
Now I get it.
But obviously, like, then having to deal with it, I totally understand it. The like completely fucking degrading, awful experience that it is to exist on social security payments. And necessarily so. Obviously, the cruelty is the point. It's meant to make it completely impossible to live with dignity unless you're participating in wage slavery in the formal labour market. And even then, there's very little dignity. So
yeah. And that 5,000 additional Centrelink staff is important. Like, we've had Centrelink centres close. I know Adam in the seat of Melbourne was fighting really hard to keep one open. Like, they're downsizing, they're amalgamating them, and they're outsourcing a huge amount of those jobs. And the bigger problem of outsourcing public sector jobs is a bigger conversation to have. But I mean, with Centrelink particularly, you will often have a whole bunch of operations within Centrelink outsourced to privately run call centres. Yeah. Which is always bad.
Yeah.
Always real bad. It will make a shitty system even worse.
Yeah. It's almost like privatization is bad. Yeah. So I think the response from people, in terms from voters and, on social media and that sort of thing, really positive. Like, I know that a lot of people were really excited about this. Like I said, anyone who's had to deal with this system knows it's absolutely fucking cooked. So I think people are excited about a radical redo of the system. And people, organizations working in the space Also, a lot of them kind of welcomed it. The Anti-Poverty Centre would be one of the biggest organisations that's been working on this for a long time. They did a release welcoming the announcement and calling on the major parties to match the commitments for a livable income guarantee. One of their spokespersons, Jay Coonan, said, and I quote, "The welfare system is a poverty machine and it has to be dismantled. All we are asking for is to have enough money to live. We welcome this policy from the Greens, which is so desperately overdue, and urge all political parties to commit to ending poverty. Payments above the poverty line won't just help people who rely on income support. Increasing welfare will benefit millions of low-paid workers by helping to increase wages as well." And that's a good point, that this can actually help bring wages up by removing that kind of that fear and that leverage that employers have that, well, you have to accept our shit conditions and our shit pay, or accept an even shitter life on unemployment.
Right. And this has been a huge bugbear and a big part of the success of people like the Australian Unemployed Workers Union and the Anti-Poverty Centre, I would argue, in sort of really changing that conversation and reminding everybody that just because you're unemployed doesn't mean that you're not a member of the working class, right? Workers can become unemployed very quickly, as we all know, and through absolutely no fault of their own, by the nature of the economic system, can find themselves out on their ass, and they absolutely deserve to live outside of poverty. And the system that we have in which, poverty payments in support is used as a cudgel to try and beat people into accepting lower wages and conditions in their jobs, suppresses wages across the board and is fucked up, deeply fucked up and inhumane.
Yeah.
And we should not do that, please.
Yeah, and there is actually a long history of like activism and solidarity, working class action from unemployed workers, including in Australia, which is really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
John Quiggin in the conversation was pointing out, quote, "This is the first significant economic policy in the undeclared campaign for the next federal election. Up to this point, it looked like there wouldn't be much to talk about. Apart from some sweeteners carefully targeted at marginal seats and voting blocks, the small-scale initiatives like Labor's social housing program, the only significant new policy from either major party likely to follow the election is the Stage 3 tax cuts legislated under the Turnbull government. These cuts are supported by both the government and the opposition." Which I'm like, yeah, fucking good point. This is like the only interesting thing so far, because Labor is so scared of, because they're so not working class. Do they? I can't.
Well, they're a friend to business. You see, they're a friend. You've got to be, if you want to help out workers,
be a friend,
you've got to be friends with business. Yes.
Yeah. And that's exactly why they still haven't fucking committed to even raise New Start, right? I thought at one point they were saying, yeah, we've committed to raise it. We just won't say by how much. But now the response looks to be even softer, where they're like, oh, we'll maybe make it somewhat fairer than the coalition, but that's it. Can we talk about coal, please?
Can we give JobSeeker to coal? Can coal get JobSeeker?
Yeah.
My vague memory of it is Shorten was running on, yes, we'll raise it, we won't say how much. Or he's like, we're going to do a review of the whole welfare system. And this is the common argument often trotted out. The payments system fits into a big complicated network of the welfare state, and you can't just bump one bit up because it'll fuck up all these other things. People keep living in poverty. A short story.
Okay.
So Shorten was like, we'll have a review of it, and hey, we're not going to lower it, for God's sake.
Yeah.
That was basically his pitch.
Okay.
Then Albanese came along and said, we are not going to put the pressure on the government to raise JobSeeker because we actually want it to happen. Okay, yeah, we can't just like yell from the sidelines. We're just going to give them the space. This is the direct quote. We're going to give the government the space in order to raise JobSeeker.
Give them space?
Well, they raised it by $2 a day, I think.
Wow.
After the brief period of the pandemic, which again is also relevant to this conversation, in which people were lifted out of poverty and it changed people's lives. People were able to eat 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
Right? They were actually able to make their rent without losing their fucking minds.
Imagine.
We did this as a country and it was extraordinary and it was a good thing that was done by a fucking conservative government.
Fucking liberal government.
Various complicated reasons, not because they're great people or have great ideological views, but it happened and it was good. And then, of course, Labor played no role in the fight in maintaining that level and keeping people out of poverty. People were thrown immediately back under that poverty line straight away because fuck the poor.
Tom, you have to understand, they have to win. They're not in government. They have to win government first with their absolutely zero policies.
Interesting.
But not everyone liked the Greens policy. You'll be surprised to learn. This never happens to us. But there's the usual kind of conservative how we pay for it kind of bullshit, which honestly I don't think we need to spend time on. I think we've been through this. Like, we know that we have a deeply unfair tax system and that there are billionaires and wealthy corporations who pay next to no fucking tax and should pay their fair share. And of course, you know, money isn't real.
The headline number from this is like $88 billion over the next 4 years, okay, right? Which does, I guess,
it's big.
You know, for anyone who pays a pension this up, it's a lot of money, yes. But you're talking about raising the pension and job seeker and transforming, you know, literally millions of people's lives.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to be this guy. I don't want to try and rationalize this in terms of like brutal fucking conservative brain economics. But, you know, you'll even have ACOS, the Australian Council of Social Services, and other activists pointing to the very obvious fact that if poor people have more money, right? If people who are living like, from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, you know, increase their spending power, they will spend more of their income, they spend more money, and it will actually be good for the economy. Now, that's like a dangerous logic path to go down, but it is an important point to point out that as if all this money is going to fucking, I don't know, whatever they think it is, fucking pokies and booze or whatever the fucking Tories think that poor people spend their money on. But it's just not true, right? People are going to spend their money into the economy and it will be good.
Yeah. And also, like even if just by scrapping those stage 3 tax cuts, I think that's a massive chunk of that money.
That's 184 billion over a decade, I think. Yes. So 88 billion over 4 years. Yeah, we can do it, guys.
We can do it. Don't worry about that. This is why we're not an official Greens Party podcast.
Don't worry about all those scary numbers.
Don't worry about the money. It's fine. No, but there's that side of things, and then there's like the Labor MPs who are just sort of weekly whispering about like, maybe fairer, but no, something else. Next question, please. And then there's the more feverish response from the Labor base. And for any of us who are on the website twitter.com, we might have seen one particular Labor person being very mad about this. So this is, for folks who don't know, a withdrawn Labor candidate and the executive director of progressive think tank Per Capita, Emma Dawson. Tom, how would you describe Emma's relationship with welfare reform activists?
It's productive and nice. Emma, a little bit more background. So she was an advisor in the Rudd Gillard government. I think she was an executive at Telstra at one point. But she's been a guest on my podcast, and I would say our relations are largely cordial. Even though
so far,
yes,
not after this.
So far, yeah, that may well change. I don't think she's a serious danger listener. Yes, and look, I will say that Per Capita does some really good stuff. I've read some of their reports because I'm a very cool guy, and they do some really interesting stuff that I think you and I and lots of people in the Greens would totally agree with. That's worth acknowledging. But certainly on Twitter, Emma can sometimes be extremely forthright in her views on dismissing Greens policies, she would describe Greens as children. They're not adults, they're not grown-ups, they don't think through these policies, all the classic attacks on the Greens. And certainly the relationship between her and people within the anti-poverty space, activist space, particularly from young, I would say more radical activists, has gotten very charged on Twitter. There's been some moments when Emma has suggested that some of these anti-poverty activists are chugging bongs or that aren't really working class or aren't really living in poverty themselves, perhaps.
Yeah.
And look, lots of people tweet nasty shit at her as well.
Yeah.
It's classic Twitter good times.
Yeah. That's enough. Yeah. And like, I empathize with this thing where you just get like so overwhelmed by people being mean to you online. Like, yeah, me too. I usually just, I try to avoid doing this where I just totally let it all fucking pour out of me. Best thing to do is just walk away from the phone, go have a cry on the floor somewhere. That's what I do.
That's the mature thing to do, okay? Is to go and cry on the floor.
Yeah, exactly. Go have a cry on the floor. Yeah, good. But I'll read out the thread. This is the initial or kind of the main thread that was under discussion on Twitter this week.
It was part of the discourse, I suppose you'd say. Part of the political discourse, yeah.
You could say that. She tweeted, "In case you missed it, the Greens have announced a policy that will abolish the retirement age. In the green utopia, you can retire onto a pension 30% higher than the current age pension from the age of 18, no questions asked. In capitals, you will never have to sell your labour again. One of two, #Ozpol. She continues, "Doesn't that sound great? No more capitalism. Publicly funded patronage for all. And They will provide essential services to everyone. Good thing we already have all the infrastructure we ever need. Bring on the laissez-faire neoliberal utopia. 2 of 2. Hashtag Ozpol. But it was not 2 of 2. It was 2 of 3. She continued. Call me naive, but I never thought I'd see the day when a party that calls itself left would advocate destroying the social contract on which the welfare state was built. I feel a heightened anxiety even just reading that. But I think it's an interesting starting point to walk through the critique of this policy, where she's wrong and where maybe there is valid critique of things like a UBI or of the announcement that the Greens have made. So the key argument, as I understand it, that Emma is making is that if you make Social Security payment or income support payments too high and abolish mutual obligations, you make it too easy, basically, for people not to work. And so the first problem that creates is it disrupts the social contract where people produce value and pay taxes in return for wages from capital and services from the state. So if you disrupt that, nothing gets done. So the question, Tom, you little fucking stupid green, is who will build the roads?
Well, I would just put this out there. My understanding is that people who build roads are earning more than $32,000 a year. That's my hot take.
Interesting.
And there might be a few tradies out there who say, fuck this shit. Fuck all this work bullshit. I'm going to retire now. I'm 35, but I'm going to drop down. I'm going to, drop my salary by about 2/3 and retire on $32,000 a year and smoke a lot of bongs. Now, there may be those people out there, but I reckon they're pretty rare.
Also, like this idea that, if you pay people without working, then they won't want to work. It's just not true, right? Like Australians, I forget the figure, but Australians contribute massive number of hours on a weekly and on a yearly basis to volunteering. Even when they have to work, they still want to do things that aren't necessarily just for money. People do things for a whole range of reasons. People also do work that isn't paid, like caring labor and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Buying into a fundamental fallacy, yes, that as you say, that people are lazy. I mean, yes, the payment rate would work out to be $32,000 a year. Obviously, the minimum wage is about $40,000 a year, so you're still well under that. The median wage in this country is about between $60,000 to $65,000 a year as well. So this is not living the life of luxury, particularly if you have a family and stuff. It just keeps you out of poverty. It
just means you can fucking live. Yeah.
Again, if you cannot recognize the horrors of using the spectre of poverty as a way to push people into labor, then I don't know what to tell you. Now, Emma would argue that she does recognize that, and Per Capita's done all the work saying that we should abolish mutual obligations, and she doesn't like work for Dole, and there's probably plenty in this policy announcement that she simply doesn't agree with, but she's certainly of the more technocrat mindset, which says that you can't simply just immediately raise this payment that will cause all sort of ramifications that you little green brain people don't understand.
One does not simply lift people out of poverty. And I'm not sure, I think Emma was probably talking about this. A few people on the ultra nerd side of Twitter, the whole ultra hack broken brain side, were recognizing that this policy obviously has a lot of similarities with a model that was proposed by the Tax and Transfer Policy Institute back in late 2020. So a group of economists, including John Quiggin, who I quoted before, did that article in the conversation. In that same article, this is some fairly useful context. So John Quiggin says, the Greens plan shares its name and many of its design features with a proposal put forward in July 2020 by Tim Dunlop, Elise Klein, and myself. We proposed this after the massive expansion of the Job Seeker program to deal with COVID-19, demonstrated that Australia did not have the resources to eliminate most sources of poverty when it was considered necessary to do so. We argued a livable income guarantee would make an ideal way to make the achievements of Job Seeker permanent. The Greens policy differs from our 2020 proposal in two main respects. First, it is more generous, raising all benefits. On the other hand, we proposed expanding payment eligibility to people engaged in volunteering, community projects, and artistic and creative activity. The Greens proposal maintains the existing set of benefit categories. And this is where I think it gets interesting. So in that paper, and I read this paper that the Institute released, they define a livable income guarantee as an income. It has 3 kind of conditions. First of all, it's sufficient to sustain a decent standard of living over time. They define that as the age pension level. Obviously, we've said we want it a little bit higher. The second condition that they say is that it has to be available without punitive conditionality. So they're saying that right now, like in the current approach, quote, the welfare system starts from the assumption that recipients are cheats. And so there's all this harsh like surveillance checks. But conversely, the tax system operates on the basis of self-assessment. So you just report, how much you've earned and you pay tax based on that, and you can get audited. And they're saying, well, why not adopt that for the social security system? And then the third condition that they're saying for a livable income guarantee is that it's paid to everyone without an adequate market income who is willing and able to contribute to Australian society. To me, this is the biggest difference because the Greens, like one of the most important parts of the Greens policy, I think, is that it abolishes mutual obligations. Whereas this proposal was that it was conditional on participation activity. And I think that's one of the main issues that people saw a problem with, right? They're like, well, you can't just have people do nothing and get money.
Right.
In that article, it does focus on like the ability rather than the choice to work. So it's solely focusing on people who, want to work but can't. But it redefines work in a way. So a lot of the paper talks about how the livable income guarantee is designed to destabilize that narrow definition of a job being just something that's within the formal labor market. So when it says you have to contribute to society to get a livable income, it talks about care work, volunteering, starting a small business, ecological care, artistic or creative activity, full-time study. This is where I think it's interesting that actually wouldn't be covered under the Greens. Like a lot of that doesn't necessarily come under the Greens proposal.
Right.
It's not recognized as work. You know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, I saw a lot of discussion about, is this the Greens sort of arguing for a UBI, universal basic income?
Yeah.
Which it's not at all, right? Like my understanding is that if you have a job, you're a full-time job, while you're working, this particular income doesn't affect you, certainly unless you get on the age pension eventually once you retire, essentially. But for those support payments for the people who need them, we're saying for those payments, they should be increased to lift people out of poverty. So, yeah, I'm sure that the economists who want to think big about different ways that we could arrange society and redefine our relationship to work, big ideas like these kind of UBIs and such, and the Greens have campaigned on UBIs before, they're going to be fighting for those and putting those ideas out there. But you're right, that doesn't seem to be the particular focus of the Greens policy work.
No, and similarly, I have criticisms of a UBI that it still perpetuates this like neoliberal idea that, you have to work if you really want to have more money, like that it doesn't undo that kind of connection between income and labor in the formal job market. But it kind of goes some way towards doing it because it says you can still live a good life without participating in the labor market. I mean, that was one of the other critiques that Emma Dawson was making. She's saying it'll increase inequality because, for example, creates this underclass of women who receive this payment because they're still expected to do a whole lot of the caring labor, whereas men will go into the formal labor market where they'll have more power and more pay, and that'll just perpetuate inequality, which I think is like an interesting and fair critique if you don't consider the fact that the Greens also have policies designed to break down that gender division of labor.
Yes. I mean, I think Emma really overstepped the mark. She said, hey, I like The Gilded Age, the TV show, as much as else, but I don't want to live in a society where, it's all down to the rich, basically, and noblesse oblige is the only way to provide care for certain people. And I guess everyone will be living on these generous payments and not working, and society will break down, and then inequality will get worse. You'll just have to count on rich people like Julian Burnside to help you out. It was very odd.
Yeah. Yeah, she also, I think the other kind of angle at which she and other people would come at this from, and this is a critique of the UBI as well, is that it doesn't help bring more people into the labour market as a site for collective organising and bargaining and kind of, as a means for workers to challenge capital, because this doesn't necessarily give them access to the means of production. But I think that's kind of something that's worth rethinking, right? Because it assumes that worker power can only be built within wage slavery. Like it assumes that the only means of production is like this old-fashioned idea of workers fucking working in a factory and having access to machines. And it totally disregards, like caring labor. It disregards, for example, like women and people who perform reproductive labor as kind of having access to the means of production and a type of production that is integral to our economy and our society. And building power among those people as workers or as a particular, like as a working class, I think is incredibly valuable and powerful. Mm. It's not just about like having a job and fucking being part of your union. I think that's so simplistic. And honestly, it's going to fucking fail because Emma, your party, the Labour Party, completely dismantled union power. Like it crippled the unions and they now have no fucking power.
Yeah. I guess the other element of Emma Dawson's attack there, or criticism perhaps, of this new policy announcement is that, the Greens are promising that we'll still get essential services, but of course no one will want to work anymore because they'll be living it up in luxury on $32,000 a year. And that's also quite problematic as an argument.
Yeah, I mean, we just explained like why it's silly to say that people won't want to do fulfilling and rewarding and like satisfying well-paid work just because there is a way that they could stay alive without doing that work. I think that's a pretty nonsensical argument. I do start to wonder kind of how much of this attack is purely just like a partisan knee-jerk reaction. Like I always want to engage with things and like if it is a genuine critique, which is why I think it's important to talk through those genuine criticisms. But at a certain point, I'm like, putting dental and mental health into Medicare, building public housing, making childcare free, abolishing HECS debt, like they're fucking popular, good policies that are probably threatening when your party, even if it would have promised them a few years ago, is now nowhere fucking near to promising these kinds of like significant social and popular reforms, right?
Yeah, yes. And also, I suppose Emma would Emma would say that she does critique the Labor Party on occasion. For example, the stage 3 tax cuts, right? It's something that she and Per Capita have explicitly campaigned against. They say this is a bad idea on every possible angle. It'll make inequality worse. It's going to fuck over women, right? Like, and you can read their stuff on this and she's absolutely correct. I suppose her theory of change or her political calculation is that, well, Labor, while they still have that shit policy of passing through those stage 3 tax cuts, it's the only way to government. It's the only way it's going to work. Greens don't have to worry about the considerations of government and can just snipe from the sidelines.
Yeah.
I suppose we would argue is like, Jesus Christ, the last thing we need is people voting for shit they don't believe in. Fucking stand for something. And yes, voting for the things that you believe in, and those stage 3 tax cuts are really bad. So I can't vote for a party that constantly says that they're a great idea. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Things would be a lot better if everyone voted for what they really believed in.
Yeah. And at the same time, the dissonance between being like, well, the Labor Party can't promise those things because we have to win and it wouldn't be popular to do it. And at the same time, criticizing the Greens for just being like raving populists who just want to import. I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, Tom, that we want to import the kind of populist, like exciting socialist policies from the states that we've seen from people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
I think Emma Dawson, again, was tweeting today about this with respect to the abolish HECS debt and make union TAFE free thing. She was, well, do you have any of the tweets there?
She's basically saying, in Australia, we say HECS help. We don't say student debt. Okay. So the fact that the Greens policy was announced saying wipe student debt is clear that we're just importing American stuff, as if Australian students who are facing crippled student debt can't understand that or can't relate to the idea of getting rid of student debt.
I see student debt and I go, what is this?
What do you mean?
What specific category of tax deduction or payment is this? I'm really confused. I don't understand this.
And look, it is a different system in Australia, and you would argue that the Australian system is less horrific than the US system.
Of course.
Not a great barometer to work from, my friend. But you're right. Populism is key, all right? So this is a regular critique from Emma and many others, particularly in the Parliamentary Labor Party, and I would say from the sensible centre of Australian politics. Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump are two sides of the same coin, right? Left-wing populism, right-wing populism, it's all bad. Well, no, I'm a left-wing populist.
It's such an elitist, because it comes from a place of being like, I'm so smart because I've done all the study and I know things that ordinary voters don't know. And so anything that a majority of ordinary voters like must be bad because I know truths that they don't. Right?
Yes, and also inherent in populism, the general idea is like, pitting two parts of society against each other or recognizing an enemy, right? So there is the people and there is a series of elites whose interests are diametrically opposed to ours. And I think that's a very good, reasonable analysis of our current society. And we should have left-wing populist measures to try and combat that. I think that's quite a good thing.
Mm.
And going full Chapo Trap House at a bad is really good.
I think it's cool, honestly. And this is what I mean, that I think that it could have gone further. I think that it could have been more radical by actually abolishing the existing categories of payment. I think it's a bit strange that they that the Greens have introduced this livable income guarantee, which has this kind of flat level with a few extra payments on top of it. But they're maintaining that it's job seeker, it's a carers payment, disability support, pension, the existing payments, when I'm like, why continue to create these narrow set of valuable contributions to society rather than just opening up the field to say that most of the things that people do are actually valuable contributions, and we no longer need to split people into the deserving and undeserving poor.
Yeah. And look, let's say the elephant in the room that, Emma Dawson will not explicitly say and no one will in Labor will explicitly say, but also a big reason why they are cautious around this policy area is that they do not want to be attacked as weak on welfare, right? As they will buy into a conservative media framing around welfare cheats and all that bludger bullshit, right? And Labor is scared. Mm-hmm. They're either scared of being attacked on that front, or some of them genuinely do believe that people on job seeker are fucking bong smoking assholes who should get a job. I was reading that Tammy Franks, the SA MLC, was famously told to get a job by Paul Keating once while she was at a protest. So that's
really?
The Labor brain at work there. Yeah.
Amazing.
Look, that's definitely there, right? That's why they will make policy commitments on a whole bunch of areas. They'll say that, yes, we should bring defence spending up to 2% and we're back in the nuclear subs and we can afford to give away these stage 3 tax cuts. But when it comes to the details of lifting people out of poverty, it's all a little bit messy because, poor people and people who might not be working so much, well, then they'll be getting a free government handout.
Yeah.
And they're actually demonizing the word welfare. You hear this recently. Like, there are some people saying that, hey, the pension isn't welfare. It's an entitlement, as if welfare is a dirty word.
Welfare is bad, yeah. Yeah, I think I wanted to finish on a couple of quotes from some of the authors of that paper initially proposing the livable income guarantee. This quote from Elise Klein, one of the authors, says, "This isn't about lack of aspiration or trapping people out of labour, but a genuine recognition of what the economy is, that unpaid work is work too, and that the economy free rides on it," which is so fucking true.
Yeah.
Like all of the labour that is performed that is just not recognised as labour that's worthy of an income you can fucking live on. Tim Dunlop, another one of the authors, says, "I welcome the Greens policy with open arms. It moves us significantly in a better direction, and it has the added benefit of opening the Overton window, which means of expanding the nature of the debate that we need to have in this area." Something which apparently, this is me, not Tim to be clear, but something which apparently neither major party is willing to do anymore.
We'll put the link in the show notes, please, if you get a chance. Read through this policy, the livable income policy. It's fucking awesome. We also had that higher education wiping student debt policy this week as well.
Yeah.
Greens out there putting out big, bold ideas about the better country that Australia should be, that we can afford to be, not thinking about the details because they're simple children and they're all high on weed, right?
I am right now. I'm high.
Blaze it.
But all that was forgotten once they took their final breath. Yes, even tools turn into top blokes after death.
All right, let's get to our guest this week. He is currently touring his new comedy show, Everyone Else Is Wrong, all around the country. He's the self-described hot one from The Chaser. you know him from all the things. Andrew Hansen, hello. Welcome to Serious Danger.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Emerald. Look, and I just want to correct the record here. I don't know about self-described.
No.
I mean, I reckon there are millions of people who are describing me as the hot one from The Chaser. Thank you very much.
I'll back that up. I don't know if Tom told you that I was a, embarrassing level Chaser fan when I was maybe 12-ish.
That's the right age.
And I think that you probably, 12-year-olds are very fickle. And so I probably changed my mind every week or so. But certainly for a while, you were my favourite.
How many episodes did that last?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Well, there was probably one particular segment that changed my mind, which we want to use this opportunity to kind of hold you to account.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, look, straight out of the bat, we're going back to 2010. It's Yes We Canberra. It's the big election. The Gillard government are in. There's been all the chaos of Rudd being turfed out. It's a big election for the Greens, and we're excited for the progressive future that we have for our country. And then you and your little commie mates at The Chaser choose to mock us. I'm sure you remember this sketch in which you hang shit on Greens voters. Here's a little taste of it. People don't remember.
I felt disillusioned and let down by the two major parties. That's why I voted Greens.
I'm an inner city trendy who's never had to deal with real issues like drought, transport, or having to run your own business. That's why I voted Greens.
I'm trying to get into the pants so this hot hippie girl is into dolphins and shit. That's why I voted Greens.
I'm a cool hipster from Melbourne who always goes against the grain just to look alternative. That's why I voted Greens.
I was just stoned on election day. That's why I voted Greens.
The Greens, the wanker's choice since 1972.
Greens, the wanker's choice since 1972. What do you have to say for yourself, Andrew Hansen?
Shameful.
I didn't know I was going to be cornered like this on the podcast. Well, look, we had to be. We were on the ABC. We had to be non-biased.
Right.
We had to make equal fun of everybody. I mean, this is the thing. I'm actually pleased you picked me up on this, and I hope that Andrew Bolton, Chris Kenny and Jared Henderson notice this, because a common complaint, you may know, from conservative commentators is we only ever pick on their side.
Right.
And, well, look, I think you've just proven that that's not the case. There is a lot of funny stuff about the difference is, I think, that maybe the Greens have more of a sense of humour about themselves, or maybe not. Depends which Green you choose, though, isn't it? I mean,
no, I'm deeply offended.
Your Emerald's deeply offended. Oh, all right, I've run into the wrong people. But you got to take it, don't you? I mean, you've got to take it where it's dished out. I think the criticisms were fair and well reasoned.
There are more people making jokes about the Greens within the Greens than outside. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah, I think that's true.
It's also, I think, if you're writing comedy, it's often much easier anyway to make fun of something that you're familiar with, or even something that you like. It's one of the paradoxes of doing comedy, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. I've tried to do jokes about the Greens, and to me, the general line is like, I think the Greens are correct about everything, and we don't win or have as much influence as we should have, right? So I say, hey, everyone should join the Greens. You get together with local people in your community and who share your values, and you get together and plan how you're going to lose. You get to choose a candidate that's going to lose together. You get to design the poster featuring the face of the candidate that's going to lose. It's grassroots democracy in action. And I think that's funny.
It is funny.
But I've certainly had some Greens people come up to me after gigs going, come on, Tom.
Well,
come on, comrade. Do the right thing by the party.
So I suppose the difficulty is with people in politics is that they do want to win and they do want to look good, don't they? So, making fun of them is not a way, maybe.
Please, desperately, we want to win.
Yeah. Let's talk about the new show. It's called Everyone Else is Wrong, which is totally correct. Why do you think other people insist on being so wrong about everything? Why is everyone else so wrong and we're so right? And why can't everyone be correct like us?
Well, this is the maddening thing, isn't it, Tom? We all think that we're correct. And I thought, gee, the state of the world at the moment is that everybody thinks that everyone else is wrong. And that's what you find if you hop on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. But, of course, I feel like myself. I strongly do believe that I'm the only person who's right about anything. And so I just wanted to, point out all the mistakes that everybody else is making on stage and, sort of weave them into a musical hour, explaining why you're wrong about things like alternative milks and buying appliances and indeed the state of the planet and even death itself. I feel people are wrong. So I explore all these things. But is there a solution to this? I mean, that's going to be really tough because one of us is finally going to have to eventually admit that maybe somebody else is right, or maybe you're wrong yourself. And I, as far as I know, not one person in the world has yet done that. I have never seen anybody ever admit that they're wrong in my entire life. Is it because we're descended from apes?
It's all that psychology stuff about, confirmation bias and that our brains are hardwired to, I guess, ignore inconvenient facts that go against our ideological worldview. And that's certainly the philosophy we subscribe to here at Serious Danger. We are correct.
You can't overcome that weakness. You don't.
Get together every week to talk about how we're right for an hour.
That's what podcasts are for.
Well, you don't have anybody to argue with, do you? I mean, do you ever invite somebody on who's totally opposed to your point of views?
No, that's what Tom's other podcast is for, and I don't let him have any of those nasty guests on this podcast.
Yeah, this is a nice little cozy bubble here, isn't it? Well, you didn't quiz me first, mind you.
That's right.
Mind you didn't. Yeah, I didn't get a questionnaire first asking me what my views are. So this is quite risky for you, isn't it? Because I could actually be an arch conservative for all you know.
Yeah, right. You're alt-right.
That would be... Yeah, then we'd really be breaking some news on this podcast.
Maybe.
Quite the twist.
But this is the thing. I've always felt a bit annoyed, actually, when, again, to go back to the conservative pundits, who always criticise me. And it's not only them who criticise me. But they don't really know. They don't know who I vote for, and they can't prove that I don't agree with them. It's entirely possible that Chris Kenny's politics is identical to mine. He can't prove otherwise.
People always assume I vote Greens.
Just because you host a podcast about the great... See? But they don't know, do they? They haven't seen your ballot paper.
That's right.
Well, we've got some exciting news that you're going to debut a song for us. This appears in the new show. This is a real first for Serious Danger. We've never spun any new tracks or debuted them. But we have a new song to share with the dear listeners that you've very kindly given to us. It's called Unscrewed, and it seems to be kind of like an anti-doomerism anthem that seems to be a big part of the show. Tell us about Unscrewed.
Yeah, Unscrewed is a thing. There's so much negativity out there. And I think this is one of the huge problems of our time, actually, is that we've created this technology, which is social media, which is essentially, it's a vehicle for people to have a big whinge. And I think this is a problem. So I'm trying to combat it. And, of course, we're all rather down about the state of the planet. The oceans are filling up with more plastic than Richard Wilkins's face, and it's getting, it's rough. We're in a rough time, and the fish are disappearing. They're all ending up in Scott Morrison's cooking photos, and God knows, we're having trouble. So I've dug up all these good facts, all these good bits of information about real things that clever people are doing to make sure our planet is not screwed, and put them into a tune. Which will be released TBA, it's going to be released right here on your show.
Right now.
All right, here it is. This is Andrew Hansen and Unscrewed on Triple J.
You might be feeling a little unhappy about what lies ahead. You see the news and you think we're screwed, yeah, we're all gonna be dead. But if you dig around, there's some good stuff people are doing. They're finding all the stuff that's screwed and they're unscrewing. We're getting unscrewed. Can the crappy mood quit your bitchin' dude? We're getting unscrewed. Low-cost battery, wind and solar technologies are all on profitable exponential trajectories. In America, they're closing coal plants so they cannot kill. They saved 26,000 lives in a decade. American lives, but still. Gorillas in Uganda increase, their forests grew more dense. Let's hope they soon outnumber the apes who run most governments. Have you heard that silicon can build back Arctic ice? We should send 1,000 Instagram models north. That would be nice to get us unscrewed. Can the negative mood quit your bitchin' do? 'Cause we're getting unscrewed. Queensland used to be a place you'd go for sun and sex. Yet now the slogan is beautiful one day, Adani the next. But our biggest reef is growing back from polluters trying to cripple it. 'Cause now there's coral, IVF, your Nemo's having triplets. The cafe at IKEA is now offering vegan courses. I'm picturing vegan meatballs made out of vegan horses. Mattel is making toys from sustainable plastic tubes, so fish no longer choke on Barbie's biodegradable boobs. We're getting unscrewed. Can the terrible mood quit your bitchin' do? 'Cause 'cause we're getting unscrewed. A scientist in Mexico turns cactuses into plastic. Maybe the leftover pricks could work in real estate. Fantastic! 18 countries' emissions fell, stopped clogging up our lungs. So let's congratulate each one in their native tongue. Go! Italy, congratulazioni! Hungary, gratulalum! France, felicitations! Romania, felicitari! Bulgaria, chestito! Croatia, chestitamo! UK, top hell, shame about Harry! Spain, Barcelona! Germany, Oktoberfest! Ireland, Bagar, USA, Netherlands, Dykes! Belgium, Tintin, guys! Austria, Schnitties! Sweden, Fernando! Portugal, Nando's. And the most important one of all, Australia is not on the list. Yet. We're not on the list yet. We can turn things back with afforestation and reforestation. Carbon mineralization, soil carbon sequestration, ocean alkalization, ocean fertilization. And for leaders who do nothing, castration, get 'em unscrewed. Can the terrible mood. Quit your bitch and do. We're getting unscrewed.
There we go. Andrew Hansen, the new song. Yay! Unscrewed. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Andrew. We appreciate it.
Do you feel better after that?
I did feel better listening to it, and it's something that's come up on the podcast before. We've discussed it, particularly when we've talked about things like the IPCC report, which is a massive boner killer that fills one with dread. And in that song, you talked about there's like coral IVF that's fixing the reef and stuff, but then the report will say that the reef is finished. Lots of people sort of saying, look, the reef probably is fucking doomed. I certainly do tend to subscribe more to a pretty doom-laden vision of the future, but would you argue that the nature of our media, the nature of our society now, we focus too much on the negative and that maybe we aren't actually as screwed as we think we are?
Oh, yeah. Look, I think there is an aspect of that. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not qualified to say just how screwed we are, unfortunately. And I do follow a few climate scientists online, who are immensely depressing people. I recommend you don't follow them or you won't want to get out of bed in the morning. We do. I've had to mute them just so that I can haul myself onto my feet at the start of the day.
I don't like this.
God, yeah. No, we do. Of course, the media, the news have always, their business model's always been to focus on the bad news. So we do get a lot of that. But what I like is that there are a few little independent websites that report, good news about the future of the planet. None of the main, it mustn't be a money-making model because none of the main news outlets are doing this. You've got to get on Google and find these funny little websites where people are saying, "Oh, actually, by the way, something good happened here." And so I do read up on that stuff. Particularly, I've got kids, so I've got to tell them something, don't I? It is, and people. We do eventually take action. If you look at the way people have behaved historically, they leave things very, very late. And then, particularly like the Australian government, maybe too late. But then eventually, when it is absolutely necessary, we do tend to act. And I'm kind of hopeful that is going to happen.
Did we ever sort of settle on a position, Emerald, in terms of, like, we talked about the political ramifications of this, and obviously the Greens, if we want to get people to care about the climate crisis and to sell this message and to say that what the major parties are offering simply isn't good enough, we need to do more.
Yeah.
One way you do that is by saying, look at how things both are shit now with the natural disasters that are rolling out because of the climate crisis, and look at these predictions as to how shit things will become in the future. But we've also said that that's a difficult dance because it can become extremely unmotivating and demobilizing for people and sort of cause people to give up, right?
Yeah, but I feel like both can be demobilizing because you can kind of have for example, the LNP or the government's ads that they're running now where they're like, emissions are down, everything's fine, we're on track, don't worry, no need to change the government or everything's good. It's not that, and that's why I like that it ends on the fact that actually our government is not doing the good things, and that's why we do need to actually change something to do more of the good things. But there are good things. We don't need to give up hope. But yeah, we also don't need to be complacent at the same time.
And we should castrate the people who aren't doing enough. That's an important fact.
Well, that's the main policy. In fact, I think the Greens should run on that as a policy.
It's coming soon. Yeah.
Yes.
Keep an eye out.
It's just castrate
on the launches,
everyone who's not doing the right thing. I think there'll be a lot of votes in that. I really do. But you're right. We don't want to reassure people that everything is going to be fine, because then you end up with that sort of Morrison-y thing of, technology will fix it. It will be right. Just keep going as you are.
Yeah.
We do need to do something. Of course, the really maddening mind game that gets played, and Barnaby Joyce did this recently, is, certain types of leaders love to say, well, look, we've got a bit of a problem there with the climate, maybe, but there's a much bigger problem over there. And Barnaby pointed to the Russian war and said, look, this is what young people should be focusing on. Forget the other problem. And this is kind of like if you're being eaten by a crocodile and a tiger at the same time, to just say, well, look, just forget the tiger.
Yeah.
We'll forget about the tiger. It doesn't matter. We focus on the croc, and forget the other thing entirely. You'll be fine.
The tiger being marriage equality.
Yeah, exactly. So, we can, God, Mary, that's right. Oh, God. We're humans. We can solve more than one problem.
We totally can. And Andrew has solved all the problems. And everyone else is wrong. At the Melbourne Comedy Festival, it's on for 3 nights from April 22nd. Then you're heading to the Brisbane and Sydney Comedy Festivals in May as well. Is that all the dates? Did I get them all there? That's where the show's going?
Oh, my gosh. I think you said them. Thanks for it. Thanks, Tom. You've done more research on my tour than I have. But yes, it's certainly coming to the state capitals, except for Adelaide, where you've missed me already.
Well, thank you, Andrew Hansen. Thanks for joining us and for explicitly endorsing the Greens and saying that you love the Greens and this is your political party.
And you take back and you apologise for your previous statements about the Greens being wankers.
That's okay. Fair. Yes, I'm happy to retract all those statements just to be polite on your show.
This is the filler song. The filler song. It's not a killer song. It's just a filler song. It goes yada da 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 yada da da da. How we going for time? Oh, you're fucking kidding. This is the filler song.
Andrew Hansen, everybody. How about that? How great was that? We got to debut a song, Emerald. Was that everything that you hoped for and more?
My childhood hero. Yeah. I even brought out, I was actually looking, it's true. Not only do I have CNN, I have all the Chaser DVDs, I have the Yes We Can bra and the 50 Golden Years of the Chaser book, which maybe I'll go and have a read now, from 1955 to 2005.
You're cute.
Thanks.
Let's have a call to action. What can people do to make the country better and to elect the Greens government, which Andrew Hansen explicitly endorsed as a political party and says that he likes all their ideas and policies.
Yeah.
What can people do? 2 quick things for me. There's a couple of Melbourne campaign launches on today, this very day that this podcast comes out. Macnamara, which is in Melbourne's southeast, that's Steph Hodgson's May. Currently held by Labor MP Josh Burns. That is a serious chance for the Greens to pick up. This is a really exciting campaign that could well get us over the line for another lower house seat in 2022. That launch is today at 3 o'clock this afternoon, I believe.
Ooh.
If you want to get involved with that, the Jelly Brand campaign is launching today as well. People are kicking off their campaigns all over the shop.
They are. And I think obviously we always say door knocking is the best thing that you can do if it's happening in your local area and you can door knock, please door knock. But another thing that I would imagine campaigns across the country need help with at the moment, I know I've been working out of the Greens state office in Brisbane and there are just boxes and boxes and boxes of letters that need to go out into letterboxes. So if you have an afternoon or a morning or just a lunchtime free, go for a walk around your neighbourhood and pop some letters in a letterbox. It's so easy and we need to get those materials out there. So yeah, get in touch with your local campaign, see if you can do some letterboxing.
It's really easy. They give you a little map and they say here's your little map area. These are the ones you can go along to with your little basket and you can be listening to your Serious Danger podcast at the same time while handing out propaganda all over your neighborhood. It's great.
That's a great idea. It's actually a very soothing activity walking around. It's nice to have a walk. We might also put in the show notes a link to support the Australian Unemployed Workers Union and probably also the Anti-Poverty Network, because they're obviously doing fantastic work on all of the things that we've been talking about right now, making a fairer social security system and looking after people who are being absolutely fucked over by Centrelink and the current government right now. So we'll put that in the show notes.
Do it.
Serious Danger is produced by Michael Griffin. It's made possible with the help of the Green Institute. You can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening now. You can support the show on Patreon. And remember, there's that special bonus episode there if you haven't listened to it yet. Or you can follow us on @SeriousDangerAU on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. For everything else, go to seriousdangerpod.com. You can also email us always at hello@seriousdangerpod.com. Until then, we love you. Enjoy chugging bongs, you little bludgers.
Stay woke.
Stay woke.
Serious danger to Australia.